Hey, JK here. I want to thank you for sharing part of your day with me. We're heading into day 8 of 30 teams in 30 days, so we're traveling north from Hollywood to the rainy northwest state of Washington to talk about the Seattle Mariners. They finished third in the AL West and had a record of 88-74 with a positive 99 run differential. A lot of thanks to Julio Rodriguez for a lot of the offensive stats and a good young core of pitchers for their pitching stats, keeping the runs off the board. I don't think it would be any surprise for me to read off a list of stats that Julio led the team in, including at-bats, runs, hits, doubles, triples, home runs, RBIs, stolen bases, average slugging, and on-base plus slugging. However, an underrated player came in and led the team in on-base percentage and walks, and that was J.P. Crawford. We're going to talk about him in a second. Before we talk about him, let's talk about strikeouts. The leader on the team was Eugenio Suarez, who is no longer with the team. Second on the team was Teoscar Hernandez, who is no longer with the team. Third on the team is Julio Rodriguez. Now, am I saying that's not a productive out? It's not to strike out. However, that means he's going up there trying to hit the ball, trying to put the ball in play, especially if he's going to be hitting third, maybe fourth, whatever it may be. He is going to have a few players in front of him on the base pass, or at least that's the hope. So if he can at least put it in play, that can move them around. Now, let's go back and talk a little bit about J.P. Crawford, because I think he's very underrated. His 2022 to 2023 stats were pretty identical, other than an additional 30 walks, increasing his on-base percentage, and doubling his home run total to add an additional 150 points to his on-base plus slugging. Very underrated. I'm definitely going to be targeting J.P. Crawford in my categories league where there are walks, on-base percentage, and on-base plus slugging. So when I'm not going to be targeting, Ty France. Over the last few years, he has been on the decline in a few categories, which include hits, home runs, RBIs, average, slugging, and on-base plus slugging. He started his career in San Diego. After 1 year, he was moved north to Seattle. Has been a cornerstone at first for the last few years, however, has been on a bit of a decline. I'm not saying he's bad, however, that 2022 season where he hit almost 300, I think it was 291, may have been a bit of an outlier. So use him with caution, but keep in mind, there's a super deep first base pool, so don't jump for him. Someone else I'm absolutely telling you not to jump for is the second baseman duo of Kolten Wong and or Josh Rojas. Both were pretty productive in 2022 as each one of them were able to accomplish 125 games played, 108 hits, 65 runs scored, 47 RBIs, 9 home runs, and 17 stolen bases. So you would think one of those two would be a starter at second base. However, it was a revolving door as they were both able to muster a combined 206 batting average, only having 6 home runs, 33 RBIs, and 7 stolen bases. Obviously, the Mariners saw this as a big issue, so that's why they went out and traded a few good players for the likes of Jorge Polanco. I think Polanco's injury history is going to be another issue for the Mariners. However, I think Polanco is a whole heck of a lot more stable at second base, as he did play the last few years in Minnesota than either Rojas or Kolten Wong. It's very disappointing because I went in with high expectations for Rojas. I drafted him several leagues because I did think he was going to be able to steal some bases for me and have that second and or third eligibility. So I really got played when I drafted him. One of the most important positions on the diamond is the catcher. I view catchers as tight ends. If you don't have one of the best, then you might as well not even have one and stream. Obviously, the best streamers would be Colorado Rockies catchers playing in Colorado. Anywhere else, take your pick. Do whatever you want. However, Cal Raleigh is a pretty primary catcher, even though they did bring in Mitch Garver. We'll talk about him in a second as an addition. But Cal Raleigh did improve his numbers, and some of those stats included batting average, on-base percentage, as well as he scored 30 more runs, had 41 more hits, improved home runs, RBIs, and more walks. So that is why the on-base percentage did improve. On-base plus slugging did improve. So the batting average isn't going to be sexy, but it's going to be there to produce those runs, especially if you have Julio getting on in front of him. If you have some of these other players like Polanco getting on in front of him, he's going to be able to bring those guys in. Now, Mitch Garver may very well also be playing catcher at times. However, Cal Raleigh is still a primary catcher. As we move to pitching, I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by, again, one person leading many categories being Luis Castillo in games started, wins, strikeouts, innings pitched, and ERA. Now, one of the more important stats, in my opinion, and also one of the stats at a category league might look at more intensely than wins, or actually replace wins with, is quality starts. George Kirby led the team in quality starts as he had 20. Fun fact, he started 31 games. So you mean to tell me that 67% of the time, give or take a few decimal points, he was able to go 6 innings or more and give up 3 or less runs? I will absolutely take that any given day, or at least any fifth day. You get what I'm saying? He also led the team in WHIP with a 1.04, having only walked 19 guys in 190 innings. As I read these next stats off for the top 3 pitchers in Seattle, Luis Castillo, Logan Gilbert, and George Kirby, you're going to be amazed. You're going to wonder how in the world they didn't make the playoffs in 2023. Well, thanks to an unlucky start by Mr. Luis Castillo, they did end up missing out on going to the playoffs by 1 game. Again, thanks to that loss and a win by the cheating Astros. So, listen to this. All 3 of the pitchers I named, Castillo, Kirby, and Gilbert, all pitched at least 190 innings, all had at least 172 strikeouts each, all had WHIPs of 1.1 or lower, all started at least 31 plus games, had 56 combined quality starts. Now remember, 20 of those came from George Kirby alone. And this is the one I like the most, other than the quality starts. Kirby and Gilbert both threw a complete game. Those 3 pitchers right there should absolutely lead the Mariners to the playoffs. It's really going to depend on the offense, and unfortunately there was a bit of offense lost in the bats, but we'll get to that in a second. We'll talk about how they might make that up. Some of the other young pitchers that really helped that rotation included Bryan Woo and Bryce Miller. Bryce Miller had 9 quality starts in 25 games started. He also pitched 131 innings, striking out 119. Now his opponent batting average was .250, so that can absolutely be better. Bryan Woo only had 4 quality starts in 18 games started, but had 93 Ks in only 87 innings pitched. His workload will be monitored, hopefully not as closely this upcoming year, but Bryan Woo was on kind of an innings restriction, and people knew that going in. So he does walk a lot of batters. He did walk 31 batters in those 87 innings pitched, so that could be a deterrent to draft him if you are in a league where walks count against you. Maybe it's a points league. His WHIP isn't going to get super out of control unless those walks come back to bite him in home runs, bloop hits, errors, stuff like that. The bullpen for the Seattle Mariners is amazing. Their headliner is Matt Brash, who was pretty lights out last year. Unfortunately, early in the spring training, he has developed a minor issue that could keep him out for a few days, potentially a few weeks. They said it's minor. They thought it was major. I'm still concerned about it, but in any case, in 2023, he did have 87 games under his belt. He pitched 70 innings, had 107 strikeouts. He had 24 holds and 4 saves. Again, he's going to be the high leverage guy. Munoz will likely be the saves guy, even though obviously Brash is better. Gabe Spear could also be a guy to get you holds. So if those are categories in your leagues, look for those 3, as I do think they are going to be some of the better bets, especially with that pitching core that we talked about. While we're on the subject of the bullpen, let's talk about one of the arrivals this offseason for that bullpen that's only going to strengthen it, Gregory Santos. He was with the Chicago White Sox last year, so you probably didn't hear about him because there was really not a need for him to get holds or saves. But in any case, he was a contributor and he had good stuff. So him in that bullpen is just going to make them even better. Other guys I think are going to be huge helps to this team, not necessarily pitching wise, but Jorge Polanco. Again, health history is an issue, but he produced the last few years when he was in Minnesota, despite some injuries. He's going to play second base, and he's going to be able to help J.B. Crawford improve. He's going to be able to help Luke Raley, who's another addition who can play outfield and first base, who has sneaky speed and sneaky home run power, potential 2020 guy. Polanco is going to be able to help that entire infield, and as well as the outfield, obviously not letting the ball get by because he doesn't make many mistakes and making many errors. So Polanco, great addition. Mr. Luke Raley, great addition over from Tampa Bay. Another guy they added that I think is going to be actually good, much better than advertised, Mitch Garver. Now, you might be saying, isn't Mitch Garver a catcher? You were just talking about how good Cal Raleigh was before, so why do we need 2 good catchers on the same team? Well, Garver has just enough eligibility from last year to still be catcher eligible in your fantasy leagues, so that's a win-win. But he's probably going to be playing DH. Now, when Cal Raleigh needs a break behind the plate, Garver will be able to step in or crouch down and spell him or give him that break. And now the departures, the biggest ones are going to be Teoscar Hernandez, who struck out a lot but could hit home runs. Eugenio Suarez struck out even more, could hit even more home runs. Outfielders in Jared Kelenic and Evan White. Kelenic never really lived up to the billing, and Evan White could steal bases like crazy. Other guys that they lost were in the bullpen, are in the pitching rotation. Robbie Ray, he got hurt like in the first 4 innings, and that's super frustrating because I drafted him pretty early. It was a keeper league, so very similar to when I picked Shane, Don't Call Me Justin Bieber, in the first round. I had the pick of Mr. Robbie Ray in like the 3rd round, so don't at me. Just go back and watch the videos of my keeper league last year. Point being, they lost Robbie Ray, they lost Marco Gonzalez. Those guys weren't the best, but they were innings eaters. Well, when Robbie Ray wasn't undergoing Tommy John surgery. And they could at least get you through enough of the game to potentially give a win, but they weren't the sexiest, okay? Another guy they lost, Justin Topa. He was a mainstay, main guy in the bullpen. Very unfortunate that he is gone, as long as, you know, some of these other guys coming in. We talked about Spear, we talked about Munoz, we talked about Matt Brash, as long as he's not too hurt. They also lost Paul Sewald last year, so you know, the bullpen has some turnover, but I think it's still really good. Overall, I think the Mariners are absolutely going to be able to compete. They have a great offense, most of it being Julio Rodriguez. They have great pitching, 5 young studs that are able to go out every 5 days and get you some quality starts, not give up a ton of home runs, and keep you in games. They also have a bullpen that can shut people down. So overall, they're going to compete in the AL West. Again, I think they're going to make the playoffs. I don't know if they're going to win the AL West, especially with, you know, some of the other big dogs in there. But I really do think that they're going to be able to make the playoffs, and they're going to make some noise. We're going to be moving from Seattle, where the rain comes down from the sky, to Texas, where the rain and the water is just stuck in the atmosphere, being very humid. We are going to talk about the Texas Rangers next, followed by the cheating Houston Astros. I'm looking forward to talking about the Rangers, not the Astros. So we hope to see you tomorrow. This is J-Cake, and I want to thank you for sharing part of your day with me.